Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go!
I'm not sure if this is malicious compliance or not, but it was one of my finer moments, and I feel I need to share it. Some 5 or 6 years ago, my wife's grandmother passed and left us her home and her well. The house was rather large, but it had been built sometime in the 1960s and needed some upgrading. We decided to gut the home and do a full remodel. The first thing was to talk to my insurance agent and see what I needed to do with the insurance. He came out and explained that I needed to do a fire policy which would replace a structure in the event of a major catastrophe. Cool, insurance is in place and I start the remodeling. Fast forward 7 or 8 months and I'm done and so exhausted and mad at the world that my reflection in the mirror tried to avoid me. I was working a rotating shift, days, evenings, midnights, and spending every waking moment working on this house. 5 hours a day/night was the most sleep I was getting. I would snap at the wind for blowing. I was so strung out. Cue the insurance agent and his antics. While I was sleeping after working the midnight shift, my wife had an insurance agent come to look at the house and change the policy back to full coverage. When I woke up for my next shift, she informed me that we had to put a new roof on before he could change the policy. I almost came unglued. I had ripped the ceiling out of his house, so if there had been a roof leak, I am pretty sure I would have found it. Luckily, this was Friday evening, so I had the entire weekend to calm down and plot my next move. I called first thing Monday morning and set up an appointment for 8 a.m. Tuesday at the house and explained to him that I was on midnights and to please make sure he was there by 8 a.m. No particular reason, I just hoped it would discomfort him having to be somewhere else that early in the morning, an annoying move mostly. Tuesday morning rolls around and he shows up with his boss. At first, this threw me off, but I figured 2 birds, 1 stone and stuff. How's it going? I asked the insurance agent. Pretty good, how are you? Tired. How about you show me exactly what is wrong with this roof so we can get going? Sure thing, step right over here. You see that shingle? Yeah. See the bad shape it's in? Sure do. Thinking to myself, oh no. What are you looking at? And over there, see that place? Yep, there seems to be a bad spot or 2 there also, I told him. This roof has taken some serious storm damage. It's in rough shape. We proceeded all the way around the house with him pointing at random spots, as far as I could tell, and saying things like, that shingle is shot. Those too. Yeah, and right there. The whole time I just did like a chicken picking and affirmed him with, yep, you're right, all the while his boss said nothing. After he was finished pointing out all these bad places, he said, so see, you will have to replace that roof before we can cover it. You're right. I have been so busy on the inside I hadn't paid much attention. So, can you file a claim for me or do I have to talk to one of the ladies down at the office? Claim? What do you mean by claim? Well, best I can figure it was those bad storms back in April that did all this damage, and you were covering it through my wife's grandmother policy. So I reckon you will be who I'm supposed to talk to, right? I like turning the backwoods country accent up to 11 when dealing with people who think they are smarter than me. It adds flavor to the humble pie for them. Well, now hold on, he tells me. No, you're 100% right. It's taken some serious storm damage. We haven't had any since last April. Now, I put the fire policy on in July, so any damage done would fall back on the old policy. He just stands there sucking air like it's going to run out. His boss then says, he's right, and since they have a year to file that claim, we will have to do it. Get the paperwork started and let me know if you need help. I am no roof expert. The roof could have been so damaged for all I know. It looked good and didn't leak. After I explained to the adjuster what the whole deal was about, he found enough other stuff wrong so that I wasn't out 1 nickel on an entire new roof. Edit. A few points to help clear things up some. My wife was the executor of the estate and had a power of attorney for the deceased. I referenced the storms in April because that year there were multiple bad hailstorms that came through. Car dealerships lost entire inventories from these storms. It was an insurance nightmare all year long, which was why nothing was really questioned. The rest of that year was fairly calm weather-wise, so it was most likely the event that destroyed the roof. The roof was about 5 years old, give or take. Wear and tear wasn't a concern, and the insurance company had held a policy on the house since forever and was familiar with it. The insurance agent wanted me to pay for the roof out of my pocket. If this had been pointed out in July when I had the policy changed originally, it would not have irritated me as much. After spending the entire summer and fall working on a house and him popping up with, "Oh yeah, by the way," yes, it rubbed me the wrong way. I'm a country person in some of the other names mentioned. I love that people automatically shave 30 points off my IQ for talking the way I do. Insert jokes about my now negative IQ here, please. It gives me a distinct advantage when someone does this. Yes, I play it off for my amusement/benefit. It is no different than a woman using her looks, a policeman using his badge, or any of the other advantages people use daily. I do not type in my southern accent all the time because it isn't easy. It's almost like making a language up as you go. And if it's that hard for me to type, I can only imagine what someone who is unfamiliar with the vernacular would go through reading it. I would imagine there would be migraines and brain scans involved before they got to the end of the post. I was working at Toys for Tots in the DC area, which is a program in the Marine Corps runs every year to gather toys and gifts and distribute them to kids whose Christmas tree would likely disappoint Charlie Brown. Sexist or not, they seem to pick those of us who have the Marine look in the casting sense. Tall, masculine, and so on. Or, on the ladies' side, that peculiar blend of "I'll beat you up with one hand while doing my eyeliner with the other." It's as much marketing as anything, especially in the DMV. Point being, we're a bunch of tall, very fit individuals out there in dress blues, smiling and coaxing toys out to people who could have probably saved Toys R Us with pity stock earnings. We look nothing like wait staff. Myself, 6'1", 210 pounds, and my fellow Marine, 5'4", probably 135 pounds, were assigned to an event at the Smithsonian. Somehow the Corps had managed to get a display and a few donation bins put up at a black tie invitation-only event surrounding the display of the Hope Diamond and a bunch of other large hunks of carbon. Personally, I don't understand the obsession with it. It's a large, shiny rock. No one is wearing it, and it serves no scientific purpose, and it just sits there so you can look at it or something. I feel more satisfaction looking at an exceptionally big ball movement the night after Taco Tuesday. At least I made it myself, often with significant effort and no small amount of regret or self-loathing to provide fuel for the push. Anyway, we're smiling our pearly whites while the various movers and doers shake our hands. Toys on display, posing for the camera so their constituents, stockholders, and so on can see how kind-hearted they are. The sick thing is how many don't even donate. They just get a photo in front of the pile of toys. Sense the generosity. Pretty much par for the course. The initial wave of donations passes as the event gets down to business. Drinks are passed out and they start in with the hors d'oeuvres. We're standing there surreptitiously munching and trying not to get those white gloves dirty when this lady who's best described as a chubby mixed-race female Steve Buscemi comes stuttling up in a dress, a waistcoat thing that looked like it was screaming for mercy from the Bond Ferry. "Hey you too. I'm dry here. Let's get snappy with a refill." Or something like that. We didn't realize she was talking to us, so I only had paid attention. After a second of us not replying, she continued screaming, "Hey, I know you hear me. Get in here. Flirting time is over." At this point, we realized she meant us. I looked over at Pocket, my fellow Marine's nickname. She looks at me. We look at the lady, and it took a second. Okay. At this point, we realized she meant us. I looked over at Pocket, my fellow Marine's nickname. She looks at me. We look at the lady, and it took us a second, okay? Finally, I spoke. Can I help you, ma'am? About time. I need a refill. And while you're at it, get me some of those some random munchy things. They stopped bringing them out a few minutes ago. You guys really? Pocket tells her, Ma'am, I'm sorry, but we don't work here. We're just here with the toys. I don't care what you think. Get in gear, or I'll have your job. I'll not be talked to by someone like you. She proceeds to toss her empty-ish glass at Bucket, who gets some leftover drips on her blues by catching it out of reflex. I could see the thunder clouds gathering. A stain like that really means she's looking at a new blues coat, which runs a few $100. Probably a new ribbon setup too. Pocket is Puerto Rican and has a timber to match, so I try to hit the lady off. Ma'am, we're not wait staff. We're just... I don't want to hear your excuses. Do you know who my husband is? She proceeded to put her finger right under my nose and continue the tirade. Apparently, hubby was a Southern senator's main booster/campaign funder. So said Google. I would see to it I'd be sleeping under newspaper and so on. After about 10 odd seconds of this, we started to draw stairs and some of the staff were starting to head our way. However much I wanted to put this witch in a compliance hold, I could pretty well visualize a CNN article if a male Marine laid hands on a woman in front of all those people, especially a politically connected one. I was sort of at loss. Fortunately for me, I didn't have to make that choice. Pocket made it for me. Ma'am, you need to calm down. Please take your glass in. She held out the woman's glass to her as she said this. The woman immediately switches her wrath from me to Pocket and slaps the glass out of Pocket's hands. I could see Pocket's control wavering, but there wasn't anything for it. Fat Steve bored right in. The critical mistake was to start jabbing Pocket with her finger right in the chest with each word. You shut your mouth. I cringed visibly at that second to last word because I knew exactly what was about to happen. And it did. It's called the Udogatame in Judo, basically a standing arm lock. And Pocket was a 2-tab black belt. Pocket snatched her arm up, plucked her out, and slammed her face straight into the wall next to us. Blood, broken nose, drywall dust, the whole bit. Pocket didn't even say anything. Just that grim teased smile that says, I am going to mess you up so hard. Your grandkids will be born with my handprint on their soul. It was awesome, and a little hot to be honest. I, being both a senior Marine and somewhat cooler of temperament, carefully pulled Pocket back. I dare say it was akin to handling a small but very dangerous animal. Fat Steve kind of slid to the floor. Actually, much quieter now that she's trying to aspirate a mixture of blood and gypsum. Security finally showed up to help, which resulted in them hauling the woman away and taking us to a separate room, where we gave our version of things. Security recordings were reviewed, of which there were many, what with the fancy rocks everywhere, and so on. Pocket wanted to press assault charges. I called the head chef to let them know what happened. They sent a van to pick us and the toys up. Funny enough, it never seemed to make it to the news. I think that, more than anything, saved Pocket. Upon coming back to the main event area to load the toys and take down the display, we were given a wide berth by many of the upper crusties. I feel compelled to mention the notable exception. This one old lady who came up and asked if she could give Pocket a hug, of all things. Just kinda gave her that grandma-style hug, patted her on the back and took her hands. You know, in my younger years, I would have stomped that whale flat. Wonderfully done, dear. And then wandered off to rejoin the party. It was adorable. Bit of backstory here. So I've recently started working in a big supermarket chain in the UK. It's only a temporary contract during the lockdown as I lost my job at the usual place I work without pay. The new job pays well and covers the bills fine. The work can be pretty tiring. It's a 4 a.m. to 10 a.m. shift, and it's basically getting people's food and goods together for deliveries. So we go around the shop collecting everything they've asked for in their deliveries. We have a big trolley that we put the stuff in, which then gets separated in the back room and stored until the drivers show up at 9 a.m. to collect and distribute them to the houses. Since it's an early start and it's not a 24-hour store, for the first few hours, it's only us in the shop, so the rows are pretty clear and it's easy to get around. The store itself opens at 8 a.m. and then it becomes a pain as we have a one-way system in place due to the virus. And there are only a few people allowed in the aisles at a time, so it can slow us down quite a bit. They allow a certain number of people in at a time, and since it's a big shop, they let quite a lot, and so it can get pretty busy. Today I was in the meat aisle getting some stuff. The customer had requested a certain type of steak, 3 of them to be exact, but unfortunately, there was only one left. I took it off the shelf, scanned it, and noted down that we were out of stock, so the customer wouldn't be getting the quantity they asked for. This happened quite a lot due to people bulk buying stuff. Enter Karen. Now, I'll admit she didn't look like a Karen. Nor can I speak to the manager haircut. She looked to be in her early 30s and she had quite a soft face. However, I'll still refer to her as Karen, as you'll soon learn why. I had moved on from the steak shelf at this point and was looking for another item when I saw her stop at the steaks. I was only a few feet away from her and heard her sigh when she noticed there were none left. She went to move on but stopped when she saw my trolley with a steak sitting inside one of the crates. Without a word, she grabbed the steak out of it, put it in her basket, and proceeded to move on. I rolled my eyes. Here we go. Excuse me? Yes? Sorry, but that steak is already taken. I'm going to have to ask you to put that back. She looked at me confused. Since I'm only a temporary staff member, I wasn't given a uniform as there wasn't enough to go around in. I arrived later than a few of the other temporary staff, so I was wearing plain clothes. However, I had a badge with my name and a logo of the store on it, which she either didn't notice or pretended not to. This was sitting on a shelf. It wasn't taken, but it is now. I have it. I smiled politely. Actually, it was sitting in my trolley for a delivery order. I work here. I pointed to my badge. She didn't seem to care. Sorry, but it's mine now. I found it. Therefore, it's mine. Miss, I'm sorry, but I've already scanned it through and I can't undo it now that it's been confirmed. I need to take it back. This is ridiculous. I need this steak. It's for my husband. He likes his steak and will be very upset if I go home without one. There are other steaks on the other shelves. You are, of course, free to take another. However, this customer has requested this specific one, and I've already confirmed we have it. Why do they get the privilege of getting to keep this one? They aren't here. They are too lazy to do their own shopping, so they shouldn't be a priority over me. She went to move on again, but I stepped in her way. You might be wondering why I was so apprehensive about her taking it. Well, for one, since it had already been scanned and put through, it was a pain to void it again as it needed the manager's confirmation with a code I didn't know. And for another, she had taken it right out of another trolley when it was very clear it had already been taken. If she had got to it before me, I would have had no problem marking it down as out of stock and getting a substitute in its place. But because she had taken it from someone else and was being so rude about it, I wasn't going to let this entitled Karen get away with it. I'm afraid I have to insist. This is ridiculous. I demand to speak to your manager. And there it was, the infamous line. I didn't want to go get my boss as this was a trivial problem and he was busy sorting out overtime with some other staff member. I'm afraid the manager isn't available right now. If you're happy to wait a little while, you can speak to him then. Oh, never mind. I've not got time for this. She grabbed the steak out of her basket and threw it. I mean threw it at me. which I obviously wasn't expecting, and the packet hit me directly in the face, and my cheek got cut slightly from the sharp corner of the plastic. Amazingly, she didn't even care. "Thanks for being so rude to me," she screamed and went to move past yet again, and I was too busy making sure she hadn't taken my eye out with a stick to notice. Thankfully, one of my colleagues had been listening to the whole thing, and when she saw Karen throw the stick in my face, she had run to the edge of the aisle and waved over a security guard posted at the main door, which was near the aisle where we were. He came over, my colleague quickly explained what had happened and pointed out Karen, who was quickly walking deeper into the store. He hurried to get her while my colleague came over to make sure I was alright. I said I was fine, but figured there must have been steam coming out of my ears, since I was so mad. We went over to the security guard and Karen, who was throwing a fit, while the guard was trying to calm her down. "That guy tried to steal my shopping. He came over and took my steak out of my basket when I had it first." The guard then turned to me and asked what had happened. I told him, and my colleague backed me up, as she had witnessed the whole thing. I also had my scanner showing the steak had been scanned through and confirmed to be in the basket. "He's lying. I had it first, and he tried to steal it from me." The security guy then tells her, "Miss, I'm going to have to ask you to calm down, or I will have to ask you to leave the store. I want to speak to a manager. Get him right now, or I'm calling the police." What she planned to tell the police, I'll never know. Steak thief on a loose in the area, perhaps? My colleague ran off to find the manager, who we waited on while Karen continued to rant and throw a fit. Might I remind you, all of this was over a ribeye. The manager eventually turned up, annoyed he got dragged out for this, but calmly asked for the story. First from Karen, then me. Karen accused me of lying yet again, even though I had the proof and a witness. The manager tells her, "Miss, we're going to have to ask you to leave." "No, I am entitled to be here, and I demand that he get fired." My manager practically laughed out loud. "I'm afraid that's not going to happen. Please leave the store, or we're going to have to phone the police." The security guard went to lead Karen away, but she went crazy. She dropped her basket and flew at me, managing to get a few slaps in before my manager and the security guard grabbed her and pulled her away. All the while, other customers were standing around staring at the crazy woman trying to beat up a store employee. My manager and security guard dragged her, kicking and screaming, to the staff room and off the shop floor. The police eventually got called and they dragged Karen away in cuffs. I could still hear Karen yelling about how she was a victim and that the police should be arresting me for theft. My manager sent me home early, which I gladly accepted, laughing the whole drive home about how crazy that was. Hi, I work at an aquarium as an educator and see a lot of annoying things. On this particular day, it wasn't too busy, but we were still dealing with COVID, so a lot of things are closed in my aquarium. We are working on opening everything, but it's hard. I was working at the Shark Touch station. Now, these particular sharks are nocturnal and wild and tend to take naps during the day. Side note, if you don't know, not all sharks have to swim to breathe. These sharks don't have to. So, they are typically laying on the bottom of the tank for their naps. I like to explain that when people come up and see they are not moving. On this particular day, we were kinda busy and the sharks were having their afternoon nap. A family came up and noted the sharks weren't moving. Yeah, so they are asleep and that's totally normal. But if you have long enough arms, you can try to touch them. But keep in mind the water is cold and they are at the bottom of the tank. I tell them. The dad nods and reaches into the tank, poking the shark hard enough to wake it up, and thus making it move to the other side of the tank. He looks at me irritated. "Now what?" he asks. "Well, you can wait for them to wake up and come to you, or you can move to this section. It's a bit deeper, but there are a lot of sharks there to touch." He rolled his eyes and moved his family. At the new section, it was too deep for the kids to reach, and they were starting to throw a fit. When this happens, I like to offer them other things they can do or other animals up ahead. and always say they can come back to see if the sharks have moved. This guy wasn't having it. He started throwing a fit, saying it was unfair that the sharks were asleep while people were wanting to touch them. I explained the normal stuff I say when people get upset, which only upsets him more. He then proceeded to reach down, grab a shark by the tail, and lift it out of the water. I was bewildered. I see people push the sharks and try and move them on a normal basis, but no one removes them from the water. Until today, I didn't know how to react. They don't train you for this. Sir, please put the shark down. They need to live in the water. My kids will touch this shark. I panicked. Sharks and other animals can die from stress, and this shark was not having a great time. I quickly call my lead, and as he's rounding the corner, the man drops the shark, causing the other sharks to wake up and become agitated. He takes off to the next exhibit with my lead not far behind. I call the animal care team and essentially close down the touch station until I get the okay to open it. It didn't open the rest of the day, which caused a lot of angry parents the rest of the day, but that's for another day. I think my leader caught the entitled dad and kicked him out, but I was at him demanding a refund for the lack of things open and a lack of fun they had. I don't know if he got it, he probably did. We're known for handing out refunds for the dumbest things. I was too busy focusing on the animals. The sharks ended up being fine, and we were able to open the station the next day. So my note to everyone, please do not pick up the sharks at your local aquarium. Thanks. Update. I got in contact with the leader for that day and asked him what the consequences were. He said we hold a 2-strike policy and gave him a warning. He came in the next day, got into an argument about the mask policy with the executive manager of the aquarium, spit on a floor and was then escorted out by the police, more than likely charged, and put on the ban list. We did not give him a refund that day. Hey everyone, this happened years ago, back when I lived in a bad neighborhood and had a kid. Now I'm financially stable and a bit well off. So back when I was 26, my 6-year-old son and I moved to a different neighborhood because rent was cheap and also because we couldn't afford to live somewhere else. So we had to make do with this apartment, which was around $600. We moved in, my son and all the other neighbors were normal and kept to themselves. We had a next-door neighbor named Karen. Yes, that's her actual name. One day, Karen decides to come over. I make a coffee for Karen and me. Then we both sat down and started talking. She introduced herself to me and told me that she works as a nurse from 9 to 5. Then she asks me, "What do you do?" I tell Karen that I work as a human resources coordinator and that I work from 9 to 5 also. Then she told me that she has 5 boys, and then she told me one of her sons is diabetic, and then she asked me, "Do you have any kids?" I told her, "Yep, I have one son." Then she says, "Does he have any dietary restrictions or health issues?" "He's just allergic to peanuts and so am I." "Okay, I will leave now. I have to go do blah blah blah." The next afternoon she sends one of her 5 boys and asks me, "Do you have any leftover bread?" "Yeah, here you go. Tell your mom I said hi, by the way." The next day she sends her second son and he asks me, "Do you have any leftover meat?" I tell him, "No, I'm sorry." 10 minutes later, after I close the door, I hear a loud knocking noise on a door. I hear Karen yell, "Open the door immediately." I say, "Hi Karen, how are you?" "I am angry because you starved all my children. One of my sons is diabetic. Are you trying to kill him, you witch? You know, all my kids were hoping that you would feed them some food, but you're so heartless." I explained to her that I don't have any leftover food at home and I have to feed my kid too. She tells me I don't care. Then I just close the door on her. The next morning when I open my door, I look on the ground and notice she placed a litter and a small box of cookies, it seems. The litter said, "I apologize for acting out and being disrespectful. Here are some cookies for your cute little boy. Don't worry, they are peanut butter free." I think, oh wow, free cookies I guess. Now before I open any food items or such, I make sure it's not made out of peanuts. So I don't have a reaction, nor does my son. As soon as I open the box and see the cookies, it smelled like it was bathed in peanut butter. They were peanut butter cookies. I threw it away. That made me angry. She made peanut butter cookies purposely knowing that my son is allergic to peanuts. Like the thought of someone making peanut cookies and then telling that it's not peanuts to a kid that's allergic. That is so messed up.